IELTS Writing Academic Map Tasks. Hi, I'm 𝗙𝗥𝗡𝗘. I'm an ex-examiner. I've been an examiner in Adelaide and Taipei. I've graded over 10,000 IELTS tasks for official tests and also for my students over the last 15 years. I've also written an e-book on IELTS writing. Today we're going to look at map tasks, which I think are the most challenging of the Task 1 academics that you're likely to get. It's kind of bad luck when you get one of these in your test, but if you prepare well, you should be able to deal with these fairly effectively within the 20 or so minutes that you've got in your test. I've also released other videos for different types of task ones, such as static or single time period tasks, changeover time tasks where there are multiple time periods, process diagrams, and then I'm also going to make a video on other kinds of tasks that you might possibly come across in your test. Today we're going to learn how to identify a map task, how to plan it, how to structure it. I'm going to give you a sample answer, and then finally I'll present you with a homework task if you'd like to challenge yourself and write your own task. And by the way, I have a writing correction service. I'll put details of that below in the description of the video. What that means is that you could write the homework task and send it to me to assess. I'll correct the mistakes. I'll give you a score for each of the 4 grading criteria, and I'll give you suggestions about how you can increase your score. There's different kinds of task ones. It could consist of a couple of islands. It could be a map of something like a park, or quite often it's the floor plans to a building. Whenever we look at our task for Task 1 Academic, we want to think about 3 things. First of all, what's the overall summary? This is the most important part of the report. You must write one in order to get to 6 and beyond for task achievement. We want to think about how we can separate our data into body paragraphs to make it easier for the reader to understand how we've written and approached the task. And then we want to think about our data coverage. In most cases with maps, you should be trying to mention pretty much everything. If you left out a minor detail, it's probably not going to have huge consequences, unless of course you need that 8 or 9. I think for 7 you could leave out the odd feature of the map and it would be okay. Now that's a little bit different than process diagrams. Process diagrams, you must mention everything because a process doesn't work if you leave some part of it out. Let me tell you some of the different data separation strategies that you could use in your test, and I'll try and sort of indicate when you might use each one. So with this one of 2 islands, this is a great task to mention map 1 followed by map 2. It works really well because there aren't really a lot of changes. Essentially what happens to this island is things get added on. So we could have a paragraph about the first map and describe that, and in doing so I'd be mentioning the length of the island because we have that measurement there, and so we have some data, and data is always important. We could mention the length of the island and also the width of the island, just estimate it approximately. And then we could have another paragraph describing the changes that occur. So that's a really good task for going map 1, map 2. If you look at this map of this park, it wouldn't be so great for the previous strategy, and the reason for that is just about every feature in this map changes. So if we write a paragraph about 1920, when we come on to the next paragraph about the park today, we're going to need a lot of repetition. We're going to have to mention a lot of those things again, because we're going to have to mention sort of what was there and what changed, right? So with this one, a better way to structure it would be to maybe have a paragraph about the left side of the map and then a paragraph about the middle and right side of the paragraph. I think this is by far the best way to deal with this one. And then a third way of structuring that I'm going to actually, this is going to be our sample task for today, because I think this is a really interesting task, and so I want to use this one today to illustrate how to approach a map task. And what we're going to do with this one is we're going to structure by the outside of the building in one paragraph, and then a paragraph about inside the building. So you can actually see, I'm going to show two pictures of the planning. So the plan you can see on the screen now will be the first body paragraph, which is going to describe outside the building, and I've actually put numbers on the features that I'm going to explain. You can do that too with your task. It could be quite handy to put numbers on things so that, one, you won't forget to cover something, and two, so that you know the order that you're going to cover them. I'm kind of using the order of left to right, but this is a little bit messy because I have to describe these as occurring at the top of the map. And then when it comes to inside the building, what I'm going to do is walk the reader through the building and explain how it's changed. So the first thing that happens is the entrance moves from the middle over here to the left, and then I'm going to talk about this room being added, and then what was the local history room is now a reception, and then what was a storeroom is now a cafe, and so on up the top of the building. There's a couple of rooms added on here. Let's talk about the overall structure of the report. There are going to be 3 paragraphs. I'm going to have an introduction, including the overall summary. I'm going to describe outside the building in 1 paragraph. Then I'm going to describe inside the building in another paragraph. Onto the introduction, I'm going to paraphrase the title, the sentence that I'm given for the map, and then I'm going to give the reader the overall summary. The first paragraph's the best place to give the overall summary because it makes 1 solid paragraph instead of 2 really small ones. It's important to not forget to write the overall summary, so do it first. If you forget, maximum of 5 for task achievement. And imagine that you run out of time to write this task 1. Wouldn't it be better to have written the overall summary so that you don't avoid getting 5 for task achievement? That's what I think is best anyway. I know a lot of other teachers and students like to just have a tiny little 1-sentence first paragraph, then they start a new paragraph for the overall summary. I don't understand the logic of that. If you think that way is better, why don't you write in the comments why you think it's better to separate them out into 2 paragraphs. I don't see any benefit. And then finally, if you're someone who likes to write the overall summary at the end of the report, tell me why that's best. I don't know why it's best to put it there. The only time I'd put it at the end is if I just truly could not see what the overall summary was, and I wanted to write the report and hope that by the end of writing it, I would know what the overall summary is. That's the only time I would put it last. For me, the best place is the introduction. So let's start with paraphrasing the title, and we can paraphrase by rephrasing words. We can change word forms such as nouns to verbs, verbs to noun, and we can move words around in our sentence. So I've written the illustrations depict changes in 1957 and 2007 to a museum building and grounds. So I have paraphrased diagrams to illustrations and show to depict. And the other thing that I've done is move the years from the end of the sentence earlier in the sentence. My overall summary is quite brief but informative. Overall, the building became much larger and the number of trees were greatly reduced, or was greatly reduced because it's the number. The number of trees was greatly reduced, or it could be the trees were reduced, but the number of trees was greatly reduced. Then we move on to our first body paragraph. We want to have a topic phrase, a phrase that tells the reader what the paragraph is about and maybe suggests to the reader how I have separated my data. Then I'm going to want to cover the data in some sort of logical fashion, like left to right or top to bottom, or if there's a compass, north to south. Always check if there's a compass. If there's a compass, I can use compass points. If there's no compass, then I can't do that. I'll show you ways of describing the data and the locations of the data later in the video. Looking first at the grounds of the museum. So this tells the reader what I'm going to be covering in the paragraph, the grounds of the museum, and it kind of suggests that this paragraph is about the grounds and therefore the next one would be about the building. As shown at the bottom of the map, all the trees were removed from the roadside, and also most of them to the left and to the rear of the museum were cut down. The driveway leading up to the museum was removed and a car park was built by the roadside. And then we can move on to our next body paragraph and signal to the reader that it's now about the building. In terms of the building itself, the entrance was moved from the middle of the building to the left-hand side of the building, where a new museum shop was built. To the right, the local history room was turned into a reception area. Further to the right, the museum's storage room was replaced by a cafe. Above the cafe, the National History exhibition room was turned into a local history room. This room leads into two new rooms that were constructed, which are a special exhibitions room and an education centre. For vocabulary, we're going to want to be able to paraphrase some of the common words like map to picture, shows to illustrates. If there's a compass, we're going to want to know how to describe it, and not just north, west, east, south, but also putting words together. So in English, we would describe northwest. In a lot of languages, a lot of the Asian languages, they put the sort of the west first, so it'd be west north. So note what it is in English, northwest, and if it's different to your own language, you might have to review that a bit so that you avoid making mistakes. Now, if there is a compass, or if there's no compass, we can use words related to the picture to describe where things are, such as top left, or top left corner, center. So you're going to want to memorize how to describe different locations. Speaking of locations, you're going to want some prepositions to describe where things are occurring. For grammar, you're going to want to use the passive voice. This is where we put the object first and then possibly follow it with a subject. So we've got a book is written by Mike, or we could just write a book is written. So we reverse the order from the active voice. The active voice is where the subject comes first and then the object. Mike writes a book. This is the most common way of writing sentences in English, but for these tasks and for process diagrams, we need to use the passive voice. You should also make sure that you understand how to use articles. Essentially, when we use articles a and the with maps, every time we refer to something new or something that the reader has not come across, we're going to use a or an. So where a new museum shop was built. And then after the reader knows about this noun, we can then use the definite article the. So we could write to the right of the shop, because the reader now knows that there's this museum shop. It's something known, so we can use the definite article. The homework task is very similar to the sample or model answer that I've shown you. I like to do this as a kind of way of learning, right? That you can read a model answer, understand how to write that model answer, then do a homework task that's very similar to check your understanding. Now, if you want to send the writing task to me, I have an IELTS writing correction service. I'll put details below in the description to the video. What I get you to do is write a task, then email it to me, and I will check it for mistakes. I will give you a score for each of the 4 grading criteria. Then I'll give you suggestions about how to increase your score. This is a really good way to check your understanding and also make sure that you aren't making some kind of mistakes that may be costing you half a band or more on your score in the IELTS test. This will increase the chance that you pass your test and maybe even exceed the score that you need in your test. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great to not only get the score you need, but more than that? Let's say you need a 7, but you get an 8. Wouldn't that be fantastic? I'll also put a link in the description about my ebook in case you're interested in that. And then you definitely want to download my free PDF. There'll be a free PDF in the description below so that you can have a PDF with the model answer to today's task and also some other task ones. I include all the common types of task 1 in this PDF, and then I give you model answers that you can read to make sure you understand how to write each type of task. And then also there's homework tasks if you want to do your own writing and send those in to have me correct and give you feedback on. Make sure you subscribe to this video, or I should say to my channel. This way you're going to get updates every time I release new videos. Best of luck with your preparation.